Welcome to the Indie PPC podcast. I am your host, Joey Bidner, and in this week's episode, we're going to discuss a monthly routine that I do, which gives me a holistic bird's eye view of my account's performance over time and allows me to see correlations between key data points. I'm going to be sharing a Google Sheet that you can have for free, and it's meant to be used as a template for you to conduct the same kind of data input and monthly routine if it works for you, so you can have this level of holistic observation. Now, this process I find is important because it is covering layout of data that's not really available in Google Ads. And it's really simple. I'm more or less going to be sharing this sheet that is just a month-over-month analysis of your key KPIs. That's pretty much it. And you might be thinking, okay, that's really simple. Why am I wasting my time listening to this? But I cannot stress enough how important this simple overview of data has been in my workflow. So I'm going to be sharing the sheet. I'm also going to be sharing my screen so I can walk you through some examples of how this kind of data observation really led to some key insights, especially when it comes to cross-platform spending. That's really the big one. So I'm going to do my best to explain what I'm showing on the screen over audio. So if you're just listening to the podcast, you should still get everything from it, and I will share the link to the sheet in the show notes. But if you're watching on YouTube, you will see my screen and see this sheet in real time. All right, so jumping right into things, when you click into this sheet, it's going to ask you to make a copy, and then once you have your copy, this is yours to manipulate however you want. You can put in different KPIs in this if you like, but I gave you my starting point for ecom and lead gen. So you can, again, have a starting point. Some clients will have different KPIs depending on what their goals are, but this is kind of the basics of what I have to begin with. So you'll see at the top, obviously, your budget for Google. So that's the amount that you agree to spend each month. And then under that, your spend. Now, even those two columns alone, I find are really helpful to track and look at monthly in this way, because not every month you hit your exact spend. Some months you spend under, some months you spend over. But what I like to do is have my spends quarterly really even out. So on months where I'll underspend, I will then overspend the next month to balance it. And sometimes when you don't look at it, again, with this bird's eye view, I'll be honest, when you manage a lot of accounts, sometimes you forget. So for example, let's say 2 months ago we underspent because of a test, or last month even, and then this month I push spend to make up for it. But then come time next month when I'm reviewing how much we spent, without looking at this, I might have forgotten and thought, oh no, like we overspent. What the hell happened? But this bird's eye view allows me to quickly see, okay, last month we underspent, I pushed it hard. That's actually the basis of one of the reasons why this sheet's so important, is just allows you to really see things over time so you can recall the last month to make plans for the next month. And you'll see there's a section at the bottom for notes. So sometimes I'll add a note saying underspent, next month we're pushing a little bit. So there's that. Then under there, I do put other channels that I manage. So for example, I also manage Microsoft ads. So I've got my Microsoft budget and my Microsoft spend. Now, sometimes I'll also add in a line for Facebook. Now, I do not manage Facebook. Dare I even say those words? I hate Meta. But I do like to put a line item for how much we spent on Facebook. I won't even put the values for Facebook in terms of what it attributed for conversions, but I like to see how much we spent on Facebook month to month, because when it comes to how much each of your channels spends, it's really important to see the correlation to your top line revenue numbers or your top line conversion numbers, and how those change based on how much each channel spends. So we're going to get into that more a little bit later, but just under this spend area, I will often put Meta there. So Again, more on that later. But then, moving on. Then from here, we've got Microsoft conversion value, Microsoft return on ad spend, Google conversion value, Google return on ad spend. And then under both of those, we've got net sales and MER. Now, these net sales and MER are the two really important ones. As we know, attribution is messy, right? Like every platform is just saying it got everything. So we can't fully trust what Google, Microsoft, or Facebook sometimes say they are bringing in. So I will still write down the attributed amounts for Google and Microsoft so we can just see how those change over time. But the really important one that I'm paying attention to are my website net sales and my website MER. MER is another word for return on ad spend. It's called media efficiency ratio. And it's basically all of your media spend. So that's Google, Microsoft, Facebook, divided by your net sales, the sales that you can do net or gross, whatever, but the total sales from the back end of the store. Those are the numbers that really matter. That's why it's important for us to really write down and see how our Facebook, Google, and Microsoft spends change. So I'm going to just share an example on why this matters. I have a tab here for example. This won't be in the template, but I wanted to bring this up because this is a perfect example of why we look at it this way. So you're going to see this is a real client with real numbers. We have our MER and NCAC here. NCAC is, I've spoken about this in previous episodes, it's cost to acquire a new customer. I didn't include this in the template because you have to be able to monitor new customers, which, you know, you can import from Shopify or use third-party tools, but it's not calculatable from just those basic metrics. So I didn't include it in the template, but it is in this sheet, and you can create your own NCAC line item. But anyways, for just purposes of this example, we're going to be looking at NCAC and MER, okay? So I have this situation where I've got this client where our NCAC threshold of profitability is $300, right? And if we look at, you know, December through May, we've got a super healthy NCAC. It's all under 200, right? And we can see with these color charts, as we started to get right past March, this is where NCAC starts climbing. And every month it goes up, 190 to 210, 236, 237. And by September, we hit 306. So you can see the line on this item, it goes from green to red. Now, the reason why I have all the other cells colored here is because when you're just looking at numbers, it can be kind of nauseating. So I like to have color coding so I can just see, okay, if this one's going up in red, what other columns are also going up in the same level of intensity? And what we can see here is there's two. There's Google spend. Google spend went from 96,000 to 118,000. So it did grow month over month, but each month it didn't grow that much, right? June went from 95,000 to 116, July 116 to 120, and actually then went down in September because we started to observe this NCAC number growing. But when we look at Meta, this is where we can see the increase of spend was affecting this efficiency, right? If we look at Meta spend in those really lean, healthy months, Meta spend was only around 30,000. And then come May, again, remember, May was the month, May, April were the months where it started to really climb. Meta went up to 55,000 in spend, then 63,000 in spend, then 104,000 in spend, then 135,000. And the rapid growth of Meta spend correlates to this rapid growth in NCAC. And we can see this just month over month with this clean observation. Now, yes, there are some other points of data to consider here. You know, you can see that our total sales also did increase, but it's coming at a less profitable, a rate of profitability that's no longer efficient for us. So by using this table, we could just see holistically what the culprit is to some degree for us to make some adjustments. And if I didn't have this, we wouldn't have been able to see this correlation. So you're going to see a few different tabs in the sheet that I'm sharing. Alongside this ecom sheet that we just went over, you're also going to see a lead gen sheet. Now, this one has slightly different KPIs. And again, you're going to want to shape shift these to what matter to you. Sometimes each of my clients have slightly different things, but for the use of this example, I included alongside the budget and spend, I also have leftover in here. This kind of tells you how much spend you have left over or went over. Under that, I've got clicks, cost per clicks, conversions, conversion rate, and cost per lead. So the only things you need to fill out are the spend, clicks, and conversions. The cost per click, conversion rate, cost per lead will all auto-populate. And sometimes I find it's helpful to see how either of those also shrink and grow over time. Because sometimes, yes, your conversion rate or your cost per lead might not change or grow. But if you see over the course of a few months, your cost per click slowly increasing, that means the number of clicks you're getting will slowly be decreasing, and over time, that could have an effect on the number of conversions you get. So by having a few other key pieces of data, sometimes you can catch things before they become a problem. And that brings me to this next point of how I use this in my workflow. At the start of every month, while I'm doing my invoicing for each one of my clients, I'll open up this budget sheet. And this is where I'll start filling it in before I send out my invoice or my report. And I find this is really helpful to, again, do at the start of every month, because sometimes when you're in your account with your head down, just looking at, the data that's right in front of you in terms of your conversions, your cost per conversion, and those don't necessarily fluctuate to a huge degree month to month, you can often miss how they are slowly whittling away. So by forcing myself to input this every month, I am forced to look at the last 12 months. And when that color line changes, you can't miss a slight shift or deviation. Whereas if you're just looking at this month compared to last month, you won't see how that trickle effect might be happening. And this is especially helpful for those smaller clients that you might not be in them every single day. Large clients, you're in the account so often that you do notice when things shift. But smaller clients that you're, again, not in every single day, having this monthly 12-month overview, or even if it's the last 6 months you're seeing, can just be wildly helpful. That's why I wanted to share this, because I find it's one of those things where sometimes at the end of every month I'm thinking, why the heck am I doing this? I'm just wasting my time, until it helps me uncover something huge. And I'm not even really like a huge fan of like system processes, but this is just one of the ones that stuck from my agency days. Actually, when I was working at an agency, this is something they forced us to do, and I just always saw the value in it. So I hope it helps. I also have a tab in the sheet that has weekly performance. For larger accounts that have a lot of moving pieces, a lot of data, sometimes I find it's helpful to do this weekly, because if you've got, let's say, you scale Google one week, then you scale Meta the other week, and then Microsoft another week. If you're just looking at it month to month, it can be really hard to see what change had what effect, because all of them went up within a month. But having them week to week allows you to have the same analysis at a micro scale, so you can observe the correlations that way. So I don't do weekly for every client, obviously. I just do them for the clients that have a lot more moving pieces. So I did include a weekly performance tab in the sheet. All right, so that's it for today's show. If any listeners would like to have a question answered on the show, feel free to email me at info@joeybidner.com, or just drop a comment on the YouTube video. You can also send me a message on LinkedIn. And if you need help with account management or some one-on-one coaching, just visit my website, joeybidner.com. All right, see you next time.